tyre degradation could be what it's all about this afternoon. Here's the starting grid. Logan Sargent starts from the pit lane. He's got a 10-second penalty after the team put too many parts on the car too early following his crash. Joe Guanyu's 19th, Nico Hulkenberg 18th, and Lance Stroll 17th on the grid. And then comes Valtteri Bottas, former winner here, of course, and Kevin Magnussen. Bottas out in Q1 here for the first time in his career. Esteban Ocon starts alongside Alex Albon for Williams. Really good qualifying performance again from him. Pierre Gasly 12th, and another good qualifying performance from Liam Lawson, racing here at Suzuka for the second time this year. Fernando Alonso's been in Q3 every single race this season. Yuki Tsunoda's in Q3 for the first time since Monaco. It's George Russell alongside Lewis Hamilton, who out-qualified his teammate for the first time in 4 races. Carlos Sainz starts alongside Sergio Perez, only his third top 5 start in 11 races. Charles Leclerc lines up alongside Lando Norris. Leclerc too out-qualifying his teammate for the first time in 4 races. And as it was in the sprint at Spa, but for the first time ever in a Grand Prix, it's Oscar Piastri on the front row alongside Max Verstappen, who's converted his last 12 pole positions into victories, has looked in imperious form throughout this weekend. But Anthony Davidson, alongside me in the commentary box, only has 1 set of new hard tyres. Could that be a slight Achilles heel as he aims to dominate today?
I mean, everyone's going to be looking to see any kind of weakness they can with Max Verstappen today, because the performance he's had, that car has had around this circuit, is much more in its comfort zone than it was this time last weekend in Singapore. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult for everybody else to take that fight to Max, but you never know. Today could be a race of attrition when it comes to the tyre wear.
And the starting tyres then really, really important. The medium tyre for the first stint is the favoured tyre by the majority of the grid. But Yuki Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso and Liam Lawson starting 9th, 10th and 11th, all starting on the soft compound tyre, as are Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg and Joe Guanyu. There's a gamble being taken by Tsunoda, by Alonso, by Lawson, who think they can make up places at the start, and a bit of a gamble by those at the back on the softs too.
It could be a race today, Crofty, where we might see a 3-stopper. And I just look at the cars that are running, starting on the soft tyre. Are they all thinking along those lines? And if they do, it could really upset all the teams in front of them who are definitely wanting to plan a 2-stop race today.
And the reason why the tyres get such a punishment here is that only about 1.2 kilometres of the 5.8 kilometre lap are spent driving in a straight line, and the first sector, the vast majority spent cornering, almost continuously turning the steering wheel for about 2 kilometres off the starting line. So look around for lap 16 for those on the soft tyres. If they can make it to that, that is when they should be coming in. The mediums only a lap later, the soft and the medium degrading pretty equally.
Yeah, pretty evenly. And I mean, look, any of the tyres that you start this race on today, well, or at any point, I should say, during this race, you are going to have to be managing them from inside the cockpit. And the team can guide you the best they can. They've got the data to go by from Friday, of course, in the long runs. But everything's changed today. The temperature's different. The wind direction has flipped 180 degrees, and that's going to really affect the balance of these cars and the grip that they have as well.
101,000 fans here today, and those that are packing out the grandstand at the moment can see Lance Stroll still very slowly making his way down towards turn 1. Not just Lance Stroll, Hulkenberg and Joe Guanyu as well. They haven't even got to turn 1 yet. Max Verstappen is at turn 11 at the hairpin. He's set off at a rate of knots, and the others are like, no, it's a Sunday, and we're going to take it steady. And this is just the formation lap, but I think this is tactics already.
The thing is, we were speaking to somebody earlier on in the paddock, we're not going to name names, and they were saying how the tyre temperature affects different teams in a different way. The Red Bull, for example, can afford to start faster because they have naturally better tyre degradation than the others, and the teams that slide around more will put more friction through the tyre, and therefore they're forced to start more slowly and bring their tyres in a more gentle way.
Ted Kravitz, good afternoon to you down on the pit lane.
Hi, Crofty. Hi, everybody. Max Verstappen's been warned that everybody's being really slow on this formation lap, so he's going to start backing up a little earlier than usual. And Sergio Perez has been given a motivational speech by his engineer, said we should have been on the front row yesterday, Checo. We're not, but everybody in front of us cooks their rear tyres, so let's get them today.
151-point lead for Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. He can't win the title here. He can win it in Qatar. Needs to be leading by 146 points after that race. Red Bull, to win the championship today, need a 309-point lead, and to do so, need to outscore Mercedes by a point and avoid being outscored by Ferrari by 24 points. Now, if you want to ride on board with any of the drivers during the race, you can do. You need the Sky Sports app to help you with that one. Log in with your Sky Sports ID and choose your favourite driver. We've got the onboards and the team radios too. Sky Stream, Sky Q, Sky Glass customers, you can use the red button on your remote control.
And there'll be lots of people, as you're riding on board with Oscar Piastri, lots of people willing him on definitely into turn one, because if he can jump Max Verstappen into turn one, like I said before, we might just have a motor race in our hands today.
Look where Verstappen's pointing his car, and then Oscar Piastri, an even more extreme angle, going to the left.
Angled with intent, I think they call that, Crofty.
I think you could be right on this one. Last time we had a race in the dry here, was it Charles Leclerc from third, came and led into the first corner? Third on the grid is not a bad place to start sometimes here.
Max is wary of those McLarens. He mentioned it in the interview he did with Rachel just before going onto the grid, and he said these McLarens can start pretty quickly. Yeah. I think we'll have them covered, but you never know. I can't be too confident here.
And he might have won from pole last year here, but he's never led a lap here in the dry. It could be a title-deciding weekend here at Suzuka then. 20 titles decided here in the past. We probably won't get one decided next year because we're coming here in April. It's round 4 for next year. So make the most of it while you can. And the man with the green flag says it's time to go racing here at Suzuka. Lights out and away we go. Verstappen reacting slightly faster, but Oscar Piastri is right alongside him and getting pushed out, leaving a wide gap here for Lando Norris. And now it's crash behind, and there's contact behind as Verstappen edges ahead of Lando Norris and just holds on to that first place. Lando Norris jumping his teammate then. Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz, ahead of Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez losing places, and the two McLarens losing at the start, I think.
It's already a yellow flag in Sector 1, Crofty. I think that was George Russell getting squeezed to the outside of the circuit. There's a move here between the two AlphaTauris.
Yeah, and it's Yuki Tsunoda on the inside of his teammate Liam Lawson as they go wheel to wheel through the Dunlop curve, and it looks like just as we get to the deck, no, they're still going for it here, I was going to say. It looks like Liam Lawson's got ahead. They have to be so careful there. They avoided contact, and Liam Lawson stays ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Lance Stroll looks like he's made up places there, starting on the soft compound tyres. Out in front, it's Max Verstappen who leads, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso 6th, Perez, Hamilton, Russell and Liam Lawson in 10th.
And there was some bodywork flying up in the air there, Crofty. So yeah, Joe's reporting he's got damage. I think he's limping back, and the AlphaTauri is still at it in Spoon Curve.
Yuki Tsunoda having to go off there, and they're all slowing down because we've now got a safety car for debris on the track. And it looks like Valtteri Bottas and Esteban Ocon were involved, and look, there is the debris before turn 1. Valtteri Bottas right at the rear of the field, Esteban Ocon just ahead of him. They are two drivers that have definitely come together. That's why they're limping around right at the back.
I wonder if it was a case of 3 into 1, down into turn 1, didn't go, and there's a puncture on the front right there of Valtteri Bottas.
And he's lost his front wing end plate, as you can see too. So there's an early pit stop coming Valtteri Bottas's way, and yeah, you can see where he's back wheels because the markings on the side of the tyre have all worn off. That's his teammate, Zhou Guanyu, who's also got damage. I hope they've got a couple of spare front wings down at Alfa Romeo because they're going to need them.
And the reason there's a safety car, of course, is to bunch the whole field up, to give the marshals out of on track to have a free amount of space to do the clear up.
12th race here at Suzuka where we've had a safety car, and this is the start. Verstappen and Piastri battling away, and Lando Norris has got a wide open space into turn 1, but behind, Perez goes into Lewis Hamilton. And then what happened there with the Alfa Romeo, Zan?
Well, yeah, so first of all, the Perez hits, yeah, he gets jinxed over by the Ferrari. They make contact there, but behind them, you're seeing further contact. The Williams was involved, there's Albon, and he's going slowly there on the outside, you can see. So yeah, further back, that's the shot I want to see. All eyes are at the front, rightly so, because of this moment here. Lando Norris, a brilliant getaway. Behind Verstappen, you can see the clash between Lewis and one of the Ferraris. But yeah, I'm interested to see what happened further back. We'll get there, I'm sure. But Max really getting his elbows out there, he had to.
Well, let's actually see now on board with Carlos Sainz. And there were 3, maybe 4 abreast at one stage here. Perez and Sainz, that could have been nasty.
Well, that's the moment
to avoid it.
That's the moment that caused the chain reaction from Perez hitting into Hamilton, which you're going to see here.
On board there for Lewis Hamilton.
He gets a great getaway, goes to the outside of Perez, and then suddenly that gap closes.
Yeah, but then there's a double tap.
Not once, but twice.
It was the double tap, and I wonder if he's got damage.
Getting hit by Perez.
And then gets squeezed out of room for good measure on the exit of turn 2 as well.
With not 1 but 2 cars, because Fernando Alonso gets past him.
This is the one I want to see. Oh, that was a nasty hit, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think a similar thing happened there, Crofty. Nothing
chain
to do
reaction.
with... Yeah.
And is that just the sort of thing that happens at a start here in Suzuka? Because you're not really braking into turn 1, you're then easing off as you go through that corner. Kevin Magnussen got a perfect view at the start.
Behind Albon. There's Albon in front, and what's going to happen here? So, the drivers want to naturally drift over to the left-hand side, Crofty, to take the racing line into turn 1.
Yeah, but Bottas couldn't drift over.
No, exactly. He was squeezed complete, and yeah. So riding on board with Zhou Guanyu now. Yeah, and that's the hit in front. So as the drivers, basically the car on the furthest inside of the circuit drifts out, thinking that there aren't 2 cars to their left-hand side. There's only 1, and that's how you get that chain reaction effect.
Those incidents have been noted by race control. Whether the stewards get a look or not, we'll let you know. This is what happened with Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen. Look how Verstappen is like, I'm going to cut you off here and cut you off in your prime. But then for that moment, Lando Norris is thinking, I could get the lead here, but Verstappen just had the better line, didn't he, going through turn 2?
He did.
And interestingly, there is a front wing change here for Sergio Perez. Let's go down to the pit lane.
He's missing the end plate. He's missing the end plate. So they thought they could carry on. They had a look at all the telemetry, but they concluded they had to bring Sergio Perez in. Nothing from Mercedes. Albon, of course, and Ocon came in. Albon's car has rejoined despite that big hit. But what started as an opportunity for Bottas and Zhou has ended in calamity for Alfa Romeo Sauber. They had 2 very, very lengthy pit stops. Now I'm seeing another Williams in. That's Sargent, I think, has come in again. Yes. Sargent started from the pit lane, has come in. So it won't matter because they've joined the back of the queue from the safety car. But Zhou and Bottas had very long pit stops, changed their noses and their tyres.
Had to be very careful, Sergio Perez, coming out of the pits. A, that he wasn't going to be overtaking cars behind the safety car. B, to get out of the way of some of that debris on the straights.
Yeah, we may have a small bit of damage just on the dive plane, but it is very small.
Wouldn't surprise me, because it was a fairly hefty hit. It didn't surprise me to see Sergio Perez coming in, because I thought I saw a bit of end plate with one of the sponsors' logos on there, and it was indeed from Sergio Perez's car. Verstappen actually didn't get the best reaction time. Lando Norris did. I think Verstappen was quicker than Oscar Piastri, but Norris, he obviously had an extra piece of cereal in his breakfast this morning, and Lando Norris, it was wide open spaces for him, and just for one brief moment, it was all looking so good for McLaren, and they were thinking, we've got ahead of Max Verstappen, but Verstappen just had the grip on the inside to get to keep that first place.
It's very hard to make that move work going around the outside of turn 2. It's easy to make it work in turn 1, but when the track tightens up into, Verstappen knew what was coming and just let the car drift out wide. Here's that nose change down at Alfa Romeo with Valtteri Bottas.
All happening, slow,
the good thing is,
behind a safety car.
Exactly. Behind that safety car, they can afford to take their time, but lots of shouting and screaming down there. But yeah, they had to lift the car up so that they can get the wheels off, because you can't get the front jack on when the nose isn't on the car, of course.
Absolutely. So not as well orchestrated as Alfa Romeo would have liked. Let's go to the Williams pit wall. James Vowles, their team principal, is with us this weekend. James, that wasn't the start you were looking for there, and that was a fairly hefty hit that Alex Albon took.
Yeah, it's unfortunately just racing here in Suzuka. It's too many cars into a short space. Managed to get the front wing obviously replaced, a lot of damage there, but the floor sustained damage too, so it's going to be a tough all race to the end.
Have you managed to get the car up to enough speed, James, to check the aero loading of the car at this point or not?
The floor damage was visual by inspection. Under these sort of safety car conditions, you can't really fully evaluate where some pressure taps, but it'll be pretty hurting right now.
James, this is a really high temperature, high degradation race today. Are you expecting a lot of three-stop strategies out there?
I don't think so. I think especially with a safety car here where you're effectively taking 4 or 5 laps off the race, I think you'll see it push into a 2 unless you get well-timed VSCs or safety cars. So I think sort of Singapore situation, but more cars now opting to stop. I think most will try and make that 2 work.
James, thanks ever so much. Better luck from here on in for you. Safety car is ending at the end of this lap. While we were talking to his boss, this is what Alex Albon was hearing over his team radio.
I actually think floor damage in the range of about 1 to 2 turns rebalancing.
I doubt it, but okay.
So they're talking about that 1 to 2 turns of the front flat, the front wing. So it's levels of degrees, angle of attack of the wing that you can change, of course. So with the floor being damaged, you lose a bit of rear downforce, and therefore you might have to just bleed off a bit of front downforce by reducing the angle of attack on the front wing.
Sergio Perez has been noted for a possible safety car infringement when he came out of the pits. He was ahead of Alex Albon. He gave that place back, but they're having a look at that at race control. Safety car is ending, and we're going to get racing again. Bottas losing out, Perez losing out in the opening exchanges, Albon losing out, Zhou Guanyu 2 and Esteban Ocon. Lance Stroll moving up into 11th place, started 17th in this race, kept himself out of trouble. Fernando Alonso has moved up to 6th in the other Aston Martin. The 2 Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell back where they started in this race. Oscar Piastri's lost a place to his teammate Lando Norris, and Max Verstappen is out in front.
Tough track to restart on here because of the tight nature of the last chicane. So Max is looking, checking in his mirrors to see what that gap's going to be like on the exit. So he didn't go around 130R. He's leaving it until the exit of the chicane. When do you put your foot down? And Lando Norris has to have reactions like a cat to keep up with him. There he goes.
Like he did at the start as well. Right, green flag then. Let's go racing once more. Verstappen's got the jump, and away then goes Max Verstappen over the line, and to start lap 5 of this Japanese Grand Prix. But behind him, Fernando Alonso is right on the tail of Carlos Sainz going into turn 1. Verstappen leads. Then comes Norris and Piastri, and then comes Leclerc and Sainz, and Alonso right behind him. Hamilton ahead of George Russell, Liam Lawson ahead of his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, and what a battle they had on the first lap. But it's single file through the S's, and there's a gap opening up between the cars.
Yeah, it naturally does around the S's, the higher speed part of the track. And you got one of the Hamilton going wide actually in turn 6 there. That might give his teammate George Russell a chance through this corner here, where Fernando Alonso is now turn 7 into Degner 1.
Chasing Carlos Sainz for 5th place. There's a move potentially on here, on the inside of the hairpin, if Alonso's got good traction and decent braking. Difficult to pick your braking spot there. Goes a little wider on that line behind Carlos Sainz. That's the line he preferred to take. Yeah,
really making good use of the soft tyres against the Ferrari, running in those mediums at this stage. But if he's to do a move, it's got to be soon before that tyre advantage of the soft tyre starts to wear out, and another problem. Another
problem for another Alfa Romeo, and it's Valtteri Bottas who is having a bit of a horror here. So he's lost it at the hairpin and found himself spinning round 180 degrees. George Russell all over the gearbox of Lewis Hamilton as towards the chicane we go. Russell's going to dive down the inside. The 2 Mercedes going wheel to wheel, and George Russell squeezing out his teammate and getting past his teammate. George Russell moves up into 7th place.
It's not over yet because Hamilton's back in the slipstream here. He's tagged onto the back of his teammate. He's going to go try and round the outside, but bits are shedding off the front of that number 44 car, and he gets back in front of his teammate for now, but he's definitely carrying damage here, Crofty.
He nosed ahead, and then he got a car length ahead going into turn 1. George Russell tried to break the toe, but Lewis Hamilton having nothing of that and was wise to it. Liam Lawson now sticking right to the gearbox of George Russell in that Mercedes. There's damage been picked up by the Brackley-based team, but for so far, Hamilton and Russell holding that 7th and 8th place, and we can look at it again.
Yeah, it's just in the slipstream. We've got a headwind down that main straight today. That makes it even more effective, that slipstream, of course. But yeah, this is the chicane. He turns in, he knows his teammate's there, and he kept his nose in there. I mean, that's a lot of trust. between both drivers at that point, and glad to see they didn't make contact. I thought they were going to. Lines him up, goes to the outside, has the speed, has the momentum, and makes it work around the outside. Like I say, for now, because that front right, that end plate, is definitely losing a bit of extra body work.
If you can't trust your teammate, who can you trust? Big lock-up from Logan Sargent, and then he tags Valtteri Bottas, and it was 540 degrees, not just 180 degrees.
Oh dear, as he had his eyes forward on one of the Williams, the other Williams behind. Oh no, yeah, so he goes around the outside. He's already locked up, that's the problem. And you can hear the hit under my voice there, and yeah, no wonder Valtteri was a little bit miffed by that one.
Yeah, Valtteri Bottas not really having any chance of getting out of that particular incident. Logan Sargent has come into the pits as a result of that, and he is running last with Bottas ahead of him. Soft tyres, but there's a struggle going on, sadly, for Valtteri Bottas as the cars stream down the main straight. Sergio Perez right behind Zhou Guanyu, down in 17th. They put him on the hard compound tyre to go as long as they can on this next stint after changing his front wing after the contact on the opening lap. The difference out in front is 2 seconds, over 2 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. DRS is enabled. Verstappen has moved himself out of that threat because you have to be a second, within a second of the car in front to use the DRS, which is worth about 14 kilometers an hour down the main straight here.
And poor old Sergio Perez, his day has gone from bad to worse. Yeah, his engineer already telling him, look, we're out of position on the grid here. You're going to have to make up places as quick as you can. We've got a fast race car today, and after that first lap incident, made his life even more difficult in this Grand Prix. It's such a hard track to overtake.
We saw it when he was at Sauber, when he was at Force India Racing Point. Sergio Perez would come through the field looking after his tyres and be a threat later in the race. That's not where he wants to be. Racing for Red Bull, of course, but don't count him out of a decent points finish by the end of it. Valtteri Bottas, don't count him out. Getting a season ticket into the pits today, Ted Kravitz. It's already for Valtteri Bottas a second visit.
Well, it's now just a test session for Bottas because he sat in the pit box for about 30 seconds while they figured out how much damage there was to the car. Gave it a good once over, put the hard tyres on, and sent him out about 40 seconds later. What a day for Bottas.
What a day for Sergio Perez ahead, and that's the first overtake of many that he needs. 16th place now for Sergio Perez, getting past Zhou Guanyu into the chicane. There is Yuki Tsunoda in the Alpha Tauri, currently in the final point scoring place. He's got Lance Stroll on the soft compound tyre right behind him. Tsunoda also running the softs.
It was a great start, wasn't it, by the two Alpha Tauri? I mean, not so much for Yuki Tsunoda, but I loved watching them scrap it out in that opening lap, and Liam Lawson putting in, showing his showcasing his experience around this circuit. Obviously, he races here quite often and tests here as well in the Super Formula Series in Japan, and was not afraid at all. And potentially his last race with Alpha Tauri, or for quite some time, if Daniel Ricciardo makes his return in Qatar as we're expecting, and he wants to show what he can do.
I'd hazard a guess penultimate race. I think Austin might be when Daniel Ricciardo comes back, but we shall see.
We shall see
on that one. I would imagine Liam Lawson's thinking, not going to give me a contract? Tell you what, I'll show you why you should have done. And that was part of the motivation. Now, no further investigation for the incidents on the first corner on lap 1, and Sergio Perez under investigation for a safety car infringement, and the stewards are quite busy already because they're also looking at that collision between Valtteri Bottas and Logan Sargent, and I think Bottas is going to come in and retire from this race because he's just saying the car is undrivable. And by the looks of his sector times, he might have a point with that one. As we go towards the chicane, looking there at Esteban Ocon, who's right behind Kevin Magnussen. He's on the hard compound tyre. He's going for a long stint on this one, but he would like to clear the Haas as soon as he can because he's now got Sergio Perez right behind him too. And we should go to Sky Race Control for the first time this afternoon. Bernie Collins, hello.
Hello. So it's interesting just listening to the radio at the moment that the soft tyre is already struggling with degradation. Joe has already been told on the radio that he needs to do more management, and as is Leclerc on the medium tyre. So what the teams are looking for now is there's two drivers on the hard, which is Perez and Ocon, who had to stop with that earlier incident. And what can we learn from them about the hard tyre? Unfortunately, they're in so much traffic, it's going to be really difficult to learn a lot.
Sergio Perez trying to get rid of one of the cars in front of him, which is Esteban Ocon. He went for a move into turn 1. He just went for a move there at the end of the S's, and neither came off. And Logan Sargent has got a 5-second penalty to add to the 10-second penalty that he picked up before the race even started. His team breached parc ferme conditions and put too many bits on the car as they tried to rebuild it before this morning. So he's racking up penalty points for the man that sadly has got no championship points this season. And for Valtteri Bottas, sadly for him, it's a DNF here in Japan, just as it was in Singapore 7 days ago.
So just as Bernie was saying, Crofty, the soft tyre runners are now just going to start falling back to the clutches of the drivers on the harder tyres and the mediums. So here's Lewis Hamilton starting to hunt down Fernando Alonso as he loses pace at this stage of the race.
What were we thinking? Get to about lap 16 on the soft tyre. That's when you need to be coming in for your pit stop. Well, we're on lap 10, and already Fernando Alonso starting to struggle on those soft compound tyres. The car in front of him, Carlos Sainz, did a 1:39.1 on the last lap. Alonso did a 1:39.8, 0.7 of a second difference. Now, Sergio Perez, as Yuki Tsunoda comes into the pits, he was on softs as well, was Yuki Tsunoda, but Sergio Perez has a 5-second time penalty for a safety car infringement, and I'm assuming that's because he came out and he was ahead of Alex Albon and shouldn't have been, and even though they gave the place back, the stewards have said that's a 5-second penalty.
I saw him overtake multiple cars. I saw him let by a few, but I'm not sure if he let by the same amount he overtook, if you follow what I mean. Yeah, meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton really starting to pile the pressure on his old foe, Fernando Alonso.
His old foe, Fernando. We've seen some epic scrap between these two over the years. In fact, right from the first ever race that they were together. Now, this is Sergio Perez, once they'd attached a new front wing, coming out into the sunshine and making his way onto the track. And I just got the feeling he was a bit indecisive. As he joined the racetrack, he's obviously got ahead of certain cars. Is he allowed to be ahead whilst he's coming out of the pits, or the minute you cross the white line at the end of the pits, the pit exit, that's when you're on the racetrack proper?
Exactly, so you shouldn't really be overtaking cars once you've passed that safety car line at the end of the pit lane. But as we've seen in other races, you can let the cars back past. But yeah, we've got a move coming up here. Have we potentially? No, the Alpine all over the back of that house of Kevin Magnussen in that final chicane. He's got to find his way past soon because he's got that pressure behind him of Sergio Perez. He almost got overtaken through the S's a few laps ago. Here we go, he's got the DRS open. Is he going to go to the outside? Yes, he's got to make this stick now around the outside. He's got the grip, he's got the tyres. And
Job
that's
done.
the move.
Job done eventually.
Finally.
Esteban Ocon, just what I was going to suggest, he needs to do what George Russell did on Lewis Hamilton, get his muscles out into that chicane. But look at the speed Esteban Ocon has got. He's already pulling car length after car length every time the wheels turn round on Kevin Magnussen, who's now got Sergio Perez right behind him. Perez with a 5-second penalty to come in this race. And I noticed Liam Lawson had come into the pit. So both AlphaTauris pitting already in this race as we head down towards the first of the Degners.
And the deg is as expected. Deg is as expected. We have heat between plan A and plan B.
So we're keeping a watching brief as the tyres start to degrade. And what Ferrari were expecting today, as Perez almost loses another bit of his front wing there, is that the degradation, the wear on the tyres is higher than the effect of the fuel burning off. So doesn't matter how many laps you do, your tyres are going to suffer more and your pace is going to drop.
Degradation is as expected, therefore terrible. As Perez goes off the circuit, he's in the turbulent air of the car in front. I mean, he's literally tripping over Kevin Magnussen. He's so much faster at this stage of the race, is Perez, that he's got to get past. Yeah, it's only a matter of time, but you can't afford to make mistakes like that in your bid to make your way through the field again.
We're also expecting the undercut to be very powerful, so if you're running behind a car in front and you pit first, you've got an excellent chance on fresh tyres to be ahead of him after he's pitted. And Yuki Tsunoda's put that to good use by getting past Liam Lawson as Fernando Alonso now pits.
And he covers himself from the potential undercut of Lewis Hamilton. That's why they've pitted him earlier. Yes, of course, he was on the softer tyre. He was always going to come in earlier than Hamilton on the medium, but in a way, protects himself further down the line in this race.
Not many changes of place out there, but there's a lot happening in this race to try and keep aware of, which is why I'm really glad that Anthony Davidson and Bernie Collins are alongside me in the commentary box.
Well, yeah, just what I'm saying there between Alonso and Hamilton. Hamilton was actually given a box to overtake call with Alonso there, so they were prepared to go early. And what's triggering that is those that started on the soft at the back of the field all look to be switching to the 3-stop strategy that we mentioned may be possible. They've all done 10, 11 laps in that soft tyre. Hamilton did say on his medium, the tyre feels good, I can keep going on this, but he was given the box to overtake call.
And there is another contact for Sergio Perez, and this time is with Kevin Magnussen. And whilst Perez squeezes through, Magnussen is now facing the wrong way down at the hairpin, and that has rather ruined Kevin Magnussen's race.
Well,
Finally manages to spin around, but there's debris on the track once again.
It almost happened the lap before, so yeah, here's the replay. Down the inside goes Perez, a little bit too late, very late in fact.
He's locked up, he's not in control of the car.
I have front wing damage again.
Has he got another front wing? Because he's already used one spare.
I was so late. He would have been wincing as I am right now at that one, because you just know what's going to happen. As soon as you commit, there's no backing out of it, but he was just too far behind as Magnussen went for the racing line. And he's looking for a new front wing, and there's going to be another penalty coming his way.
Because you've got to say, of all the overtakes we've seen Sergio Perez pull off, and there have been plenty of excellent ones, that's not going to make the top 10, top 100, probably not the top 200 either, to be fair. We'll see what race control say. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
A lot of the pit crews are anticipating a virtual safety car for debris. Nothing yet. Let me know if there is. Sergio Perez has to pit. There is a spare front wing and nose for him, so he's come slowly into the pits. So obviously a virtual safety car now would advantage Hamilton in his fight with Alonso. Can he start from Alonso, Crofty? I know you mentioned it, but up to P6, but then has pitted and put the hard tyres on. But let's see what happens. By the way, Lawson did get undercut by Tsunoda, didn't he?
Yeah.
For well, there was 15th.
They are down at the moment at 13th and 14th. Sergio Perez has got another front wing, and they fitted it again, and off he goes. And when he comes out, well, he's spun last, unfortunately for him. And this is coming into the pits.
This is what it was for, Crofty. He overtook the car before the safety car line coming into the pit, so it wasn't what happened on the exit of the pit lane. That makes much more sense. That's the shot we didn't see.
Piastri into the pits. So he was the second of the McLaren cars, and Oscar coming in now for his first pit stop as we have a virtual safety car. Now that could be good timing.
Well, good timing, yeah, for the McLaren driver there, Oscar Piastri, and anybody else who pits or in the pit lane now.
So they were protecting themselves from Ferrari by pitting Oscar Piastri first. You only lose 10 seconds under the safety car and the virtual safety car. You lose about 22 seconds during normal racing speed. Piastri comes out 9th ahead of Esteban Ocon. That is good news for Oscar Piastri.
But it's a free pit stop.
Yep.
Under the virtual safety car, free pit stop. Verstappen didn't have that yet. Norris hasn't had that yet, neither of two Ferraris. So at the moment as it stands, brilliant news for McLaren fans and Oscar Piastri fans.
So this is Max Verstappen leading the race by quite some margin from Lando Norris. But now we've got a virtual safety car. I'm expecting to see.
No, the car doesn't feel right. Hey, copy.
Yeah, it didn't sound right either, Sergio Perez. But as I say, we've now got Max Verstappen leading from Lando Norris. The virtual safety car's not lasting long.
It's ending, yeah, the virtual safety car's ending, so I don't know, Crofty, if these other cars can come into the pits.
They can't take advantage of it.
Then that is brilliant news for Piastri. Yeah, it's green.
Who saved about 10 seconds of his race time by being in the pits at the right time. Whilst he has a gap of 32 seconds to Max Verstappen, Verstappen's going to have to pit in a minute and lose at least 22 seconds of that particular advantage. It worked out well for Oscar Piastri because he should now get ahead of his teammate Lando Norris when Norris has to come and pit.
So I'm hearing Bernie's just told me in ways that that Piastri didn't maximise the virtual safety car. He was coming into the pits while the track was still green, then it went to a virtual safety car as he was stopping. So
right.
It was a small benefit, not quite as big as we first thought.
So Max Verstappen leads Lando Norris by 9 seconds. Charles Leclerc leads Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton ahead of George Russell. Pierre Gasly ahead of Lance Stroll, who is now just pitting. And then comes Oscar Piastri and Esteban Ocon, and they are telling Sergio Perez to retire the car. So the nearest challenger to Max Verstappen in the championship is going to score no points here today, thus making Max Verstappen's job of winning a third world title that much easier in Qatar.
But making the chance of Red Bull winning the Constructors', well, basically it's all down to him, isn't it now?
Yep.
So he's going to try and win this Constructors' Championship all alone for Red Bull today.
What a sorry sight for Sergio Perez, who retires here at Suzuka for the second time in his career, first time since 2012. Oh dear, you've got a feel for Sergio Perez with a lot of what's gone on today. The final 5-second penalty that he's been given for causing a collision with Kevin Magnussen will mean absolutely nothing. Now this is Lando Norris.
This is under the virtual safety car.
Yeah, it is. Did he get a heads there?
Don't understand what that's all about.
That's Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull. Now, I think he's got a head, but whilst you're not allowed to overtake under
Perez,
a safety car or a virtual safety car, if the car in front has significant damage and is limping along.
Box opposite McLaren, box opposite McLaren.
And there goes Oscar Piastri, past Pierre Gasly, fresher tyres, moving up in 7th place. You are allowed to overtake if the car in front is showing significant damage and has got a problem out there. So that's, I think, why we were seeing that replay, but he might be okay, Lando Norris, in terms of any investigation. We'll keep you posted. Lap 16 of a thoroughly absorbing, so far, Japanese Grand Prix, which has Verstappen out in front with the fastest lap, and it has Red Bull at the moment going on to win a 6th Constructors' title, but there's a long way to go yet. Ted Crabb, it's down to you.
So that was for Leclerc, the box opposite McLaren, wasn't it, Crofty?
Yeah.
A dummy. It's a dummy. Ferrari aren't boxing, McLaren aren't boxing.
Hamilton off.
Hamilton off the track, and George Russell, his teammate, right up his gearbox as they go into the hairpin. And that could have been a lot nastier for Lewis Hamilton going off at the second of the Degner corners. There's no runoff area down there. Ask Pierre Gasly. He's already crashed so far this weekend at that point. And Hamilton, with a lot of dirt on his tyres, now having his hands full, trying to defend against George Russell, who wants to go round the outside at Spoon Curve, and both Mercedes go off the track. Wow, Hamilton staying ahead and keeping hold of that 5th place. There was no room given there. They both went off the track. How did you see that, Ant?
Yeah, I mean, Hamilton just forced the speed, as did Verstappen into turn 1, fighting Lando Norris. But George has got the speed, it seems, at this point in the race. And they're wasting each other's time.
As Max Verstappen then comes into the pits, and I think George Russell might be coming into the pits too for Mercedes. So Lando Norris takes over the lead of this race. It's Lewis Hamilton who's coming into the pits for Mercedes. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz 2nd and 3rd. Then comes Russell. Then comes Max Verstappen ahead of Oscar Piastri, who stopped, as we know, before Max Verstappen and is that much closer to him. You can see it on your screen. Hamilton then pitting, and already Gasly and Ocon going past him. What they'll be hoping is that as Alonso now goes past, he comes out ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Here comes Yuki Tsunoda heading down to turn 1. This is going to be tight, but it looks like the Mercedes crew have done a very good job to get Lewis Hamilton into the pits, change his tyres onto the hard compound, back out again with a nice clear track ahead of him.
Yeah, that's the kind of gap they would have seen on their strategy tools, and that, you know, you have to perfect the pit stop from all of the crew down there when it's that tight. So yeah, good job that they could get Lewis out. Right, here's that moment through Degner 1 into Degner 2. Is on the curb on the turn-in, picked up understeer mid-corner and clumsily went over the AstroTurf on the exit. Then he had his eyes full in the mirror of his teammate mounting the attack into the hairpin first down at turn 11.
Who do we want to fight here, each other or the others?
Yeah, clearly they are free to fight, and reminiscent of what we saw in Monza with the 2 Ferraris, but ultimately, like George was saying, for how total race pace here, it's not ideal.
No, it's not ideal at all. Hamilton, you know, struggling to clean his tyres after going off, and then struggling to defend against George Russell. Now, we mentioned right at the start, Red Bull having 1 set less of the hard tyre compared to their rivals. and we'll talk about that in a moment as Lando Norris now comes in for a pit stop, and it looks like Charles Leclerc also into the pits. And it's hard tyres going on for Lando.
So this is going to be the interesting one, the fight between the two McLaren teammates. We've already seen it at Mercedes. How's it going to play out with that advantage that Piastri has against Norris?
Piastri has got past Lando Norris, and we thought he would. Esteban Ocon passed, and he hasn't pitted yet. And he comes out, Lando Norris, just ahead of Fernando Alonso, who's just ahead of that man there, Charles Leclerc. Bernie Collins at race control. As we just see Lance Stroll now on Nico Hülkenberg, and an easy pass for him into turn one, goes up into 13th. Right, Bernie at race control.
Yeah, I was just trying to discuss the Hamilton-Russell argument that we've seen there. Hamilton had that slightly slow stop that we've seen. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I think there was an opportunity if Russell had boxed just one lap later to come out ahead, but he's not done that. And as we see with the two McLarens, the degradation is such that Russell's now losing that pit window to Hamilton.
But does that mean, Bernie, that Russell's thinking of a different strategy here and maybe a two-stopper instead of a three? Well, is that
potentially,
possible?
or he's even in his stints, so that they've got very even stints and they're not carrying heavy dag into each one.
Ted Kravitz, down to you.
So Lando has gone on to the hard tyre, but Leclerc, who followed him in, so was always going to guarantee to come out behind him, is on the racier tyre.
I look very quick now. Okay, very
So
quick.
Leclerc's gone on to a new medium, Crofty, and Lando's on a hard now.
So mixture of tyre strategies on this one. Max Verstappen on the mediums, Oscar Piastri on the hards. We've got Lando Norris on the hards. Fernando Alonso on the hards too. Medium for Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen moves up in a second place behind George Russell, who now leads this race but hasn't pitted yet. Sainz stops in his box as Piastri now goes past. And where will he come out? Behind. Oh, it's a move down the straight there. Charles Leclerc on Fernando Alonso. And as they disappear into turn one, Carlos Sainz comes out in 8th place. So Leclerc on those fresh mediums getting 6th place as Gasly now pits.
The thing here, Crofty, that's interesting is that the two McLarens, obviously, they're going to probably go through this race now on the hard tyres. They've got 2 sets of them, whereas the Red Bull of Max Verstappen doesn't. So their race pace should start to get a little bit more
George Russell's not fighting this one.
Definitely not, it's not his race today.
Max Verstappen retakes the lead on lap 19 of this Japanese Grand Prix. Now that he's pitted, George Russell hasn't. Russell's not hanging around wasting his time trying to defend against a car on much grippier, fresher tyres.
So they've offset the two Mercedes, as Bernie was saying, and you know, that's given them a bit of a virtual race now. And in a way, it diffuses the absolute direct attack. Speaking of attack, Leclerc
into Spoon.
Gets through.
Goes through on Esteban Ocon. So Charles Leclerc moves himself up into 5th place. Esteban Ocon, slightly slower, harder compound tyre there in the Alpine, and he's now got Fernando Alonso coming right at him, and that's battle resumed after Singapore 7 days ago. Ted, down to you.
Radio message to Verstappen. It was quite easy. His engineer, Verstappen's engineer, said, "Look, George has been told not to fight you too hard, to control and preserve his tyres." So really for Mercedes, Crofty, it was a case of, while the Wolf is away, the boys will play. Of course, boss Toto Wolff not here this weekend. But
I bet he's watching.
Yeah, I bet he wasn't happy about it either. Yeah. And yeah, case of now, I think Mercedes are now thinking, yeah, let's focus on the others rather than ourselves. Good fight while it lasted, though.
Fastest man on the track, thank you, Ted, is Lando Norris currently. He's found some pace on these hard compound tyres, but is he pushing too hard too soon?
It might be that case. You know, we've seen just in the last race, Crofty, in Singapore, that how gently you have to bring the tyres in for it to benefit you later on. But they can afford to be pushing that little bit harder than most out there on the mediums, because the McLaren will go through, like I was saying before, on the hard tyres. They've got 2 sets of them. It should be the fastest race tyre here today. So a little bit of hope still for McLaren with their fight with Verstappen.
This is a great fight that Carlos Sainz has now joined. Fernando Alonso just ahead of him, sliding his way out of that hairpin as they go wheel to wheel now through the next corner. Alonso's got the inside line. That's just about keeping him ahead, but Carlos Sainz should have the traction, and now the inside line through Spoon to make the move up into 7th place, and does.
Yeah, Fernando just tried to minimise the angle of attack on the exit of the hairpin to try and compromise Sainz's progress, but with a fresher tyre like Sainz and the better car here today at Suzuka, he was never going to hold him back. And now Sainz has his eyes firmly focused on the Alpine in front. He's going to try to line him up through this.
Consider plan B. Consider plan B.
Yeah, I firm on the message, George.
George calling it from the cockpit, and now in the cockpit of the Ferrari, Carlos Sainz can see an overtake coming. Esteban Ocon hasn't got the power to live with a Ferrari with DRS as well down that straight, and Lewis Hamilton now gaining on Fernando Alonso. That Aston Martin not performing on the hard tyre at all, and it just looks so slow compared to the Mercedes now that they've switched from the soft to the hard. Meanwhile, talking of Mercedes, as Gasly gets ahead of Stroll is now pitting, talking of Mercedes, no further investigation for that incident around the spoon curve between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. And Ted Kravitz, I noticed Lance Stroll coming in, 2 seconds.
You throw me to the lions. Stop that early, man. Unbelievable.
Fernando not happy with the strategy.
Yeah, but he's the King Lion. Come on, Fernando.
Well, he's the King Lion, but he's roaring and he's not taking much pride in what's going on with the strategy there. Lewis Hamilton out of the hairpin. Well, Fernando Alonso making it hard, but how much longer can he keep Hamilton at bay? Meanwhile, Ted, I wanted to say Lance Stroll coming into the pits. Why is that?
They've seen some damage at the back of the car. They're not happy with. The mechanic took a look and immediately gave the crossed arms sign, not safe to carry on, so Stroll is retiring. Do we think Russell's plan B is an offset 2-stop with a long first stint, or a 1-stopper, guys up there?
Well, we'll see.
Well, how long are you going to see an overtake here, potentially into 130? Here comes Hamilton. That's brave stuff. Flat out on the inside. Job done.
Nice. Lewis Hamilton up into 8th place. Fernando Alonso thrown to the lions and having no attack whatsoever through 130R. We've had 3 retire from this race. Bottas, Perez and Stroll. We've now got Lewis Hamilton overtaking Fernando Alonso and trying to get past Esteban Ocon, going into turn 1. 2 cars in the space of a kilometre. Lewis Hamilton up into 7th place.
He's still fighting his teammate, isn't he? Virtually. He knows that every car he comes across, he has to get past them as quickly as possible to maximise that fresh set of tyres before Russell comes in and is on the attack later on in the race. Because like Fernando's complaining about now, his tyres are too old compared to the drivers he's fighting, and that's where Lewis will be with his teammates. So yeah, this is Lance Stroll in the garage down there at Aston Martin. What a terrible weekend for him.
Yeah, and you can see the look on his face there as he talks with Ben Michel. His race engineer, just no luck going Lance Stroll's way currently.
Are they just flexing the rear wing there?
I was looking at Lance and Ben.
Yeah, it was the last shot I saw, just the rear of the car. The mechanics seemed to be moving the rear wing.
It might be broken. That's why that's why they're checking it down. Right. Lap 22, Fernando Alonso stopped on lap 11. That's why he's complaining about strategy, because all around him we've got fresher tyres at the moment. And out in front, the gap between Verstappen and Russell within the space of a couple of laps has now got to about 7 seconds. He's not struggling on the medium tyre. Oscar Piastri ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, who's still lapping faster on these hard tyres. That gap's got down to about 2 and a bit seconds now. But Bernie Collins, what are you keeping an eye on at race control?
Well, I'm keeping an eye on the Russell battle with Hamilton, as was Ted suggesting in the pit lane. I think Russell's going to go for the 1-stop here, and the reason for that is he's currently lapping quicker than Tsunoda at the edge of his pit window, so he's got no threats coming behind. As long as he can keep this lap time up on that medium tyre, there's no reason for him at this stage to box for the hard. And Alonso's actually dropping out of his pit window, so Russell's actually gaining positions on some people behind that have already stopped. So there's no reason at this stage for Russell to stop, aside from maybe Piastri closing that gap for the overtake.
Oh, really interesting stuff there. The undercut is powerful, but George Russell going for the overcut. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon.
So, Lando, we think Russell will try and do the 1-stop. Therefore, he is only a threat if we abuse our tyres.
So you might just need to manage your pace a little bit more. Esteban Ocon defending against Fernando Alonso. I know you don't brake when you go into turn 1 instantaneously, but was that moving around in the zone a bit too much?
There was a bit of movement there, I mean, from both drivers, but yeah, I think we're going to see a replay of it. No,
well,
this is
Pierre
with Gasly, yeah.
On car number 40, Liam Lawson. Pierre Gasly making his way up into 11th place. Both drivers are driving here in Japanese Super Formula before. Gasly, of course, has raced here at Suzuka before scored points in 2019 at Liam Lawson's F1 debut at Suzuka.
But there's no love lost, is there, between Ocon and Alonso, the old teammates, of course, from Alpine, and Alonso will be keen to get past him as soon as possible, only half a second behind.
Now, that message from McLaren to Lando Norris about not abusing your tyres might be because they're experiencing high degradation, also protects Oscar Piastri and doesn't force any unnecessary pressure on him if Lando's been asked just to back off a little bit. And that might be, team-wise, a good call to make if they're trying to maximise things as a team. Obviously, as a driver, Ant, you want to do the best you can to finish as high as you can. You've got
to have the feel from inside the car, Crofty. You know when you're over-pushing the tyres, but it's always exciting racing against somebody else that's on a completely different strategy like we expect Russell is, and he's made that call. That's what I like about George. You know, he's always thinking on his feet. He's got the feel, of course, inside the car, and he's relaying the information to the team, saying, I think these tyres are better than we expected today, so let's change things up a bit.
So we're on lap 24 out of 53, going through the spoon curve. George Russell has Oscar Piastri right behind him.
He's pulling away on the straight, man.
Yeah, copy that.
So think about something.
Yeah, that's a message from Fernando Alonso to Chris Cronin, his race engineer, saying, come on, get me out of this hole here, because you've put me in a position that we shouldn't be in, and you need to find a way past. Esteban Ocon too quick in a straight line. Luckily, there isn't much straight line here for the Alpine to exploit. Well, luckily for Fernando Alonso. George Russell now pits. He's made it to lap 25 on a set of medium tyres. Decent stint that from George Russell in track temperatures, which are still 40 degrees. Charles Leclerc goes past down the main straight, as does Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton. George Russell has the hard tyres now fitted on. Can they get to the end of this race? And is he going to come out ahead of these two? No, he's not. Fernando Alonso with DRS trying to get past Esteban Ocon into turn one. Once again, nothing doing for the Aston Martin.
Yeah, as Alonso reported, that Alpine's just a little bit too fast, even without DRS.
The longer I spend behind now, the worse you're going to make the race for me, so... Understood.
That's Lando Norris saying, yeah, absolutely fine if you tell me not to abuse my tyres, but it ain't going to help me. And maybe he is thinking a bit about George Russell in that particular battle towards the checkered flag.
And by the way, if you could just let me pass my teammate, that would be really helpful with me saving tyres as well.
Quite. George Russell's first task is to try and get past Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon.
He's now do it here.
Yeah, he's now joined this
pure traction
trio.
watch.
Well, you say that, Fernando's going to make it hard for him. He'll do it eventually, but not straight out of that hairpin. He'll do it because he's got the inside line going towards a spoon curve. About 3 times now, Fernando has fought in vain to make it difficult for the car behind, and then losing a place into spoon.
I think what Mercedes saw there with George Russell, they knew he was going to drop behind Fernando, but they'd already seen their other car with Lewis overtake Fernando on track easily with a slight tyre offset. So with a bigger tyre offset, it was going to be easy pickings.
We're on board with Lando Norris. That's Oscar Piastri into turn one. Now
this is what he's talking about.
Yeah, this is looking great for for McLaren in their battle with Aston Martin for 4th in the Constructors' Championship. But McLaren are going to let their drivers race, it seems. And rather than protecting a 2-3, they want a 2-3, but they don't really mind which order, and they're allowing the drivers to fight it out. And we have seen in previous races that these two, when they do scrap away...
What are you also doing?
When they do scrap away, it can get a little bit hairy.
I don't know exactly how Norris got that chance to attack his teammate into turn one there.
But he had
I don't know if he made a
DRS.
mistake, or I would have expected the gap to be naturally a little bit further back than that.
Well,
I don't know what happened in the chicane before it.
He had DRS. Oscar's looking to his left, but Lando's not coming that way. Coming to the right. And he has been gaining a lot, then backed off for a couple of laps, and then I think started to gain again. That radio message that we've been hearing might be just a little delay to it. Bernie Collins is watching the action at Sky Race Control.
McLaren are trying to swap the cars, but I think Piastri thought he wasn't quick enough, and he wasn't going to give it to him.
You want George to beat us, then I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
he's faster. Lando's clearly faster. They have to swap the cars. For the good of the team, I want to see a race, of course, don't get me wrong. I think he might even just overtake here anyway. He's close enough, but he's clearly got the pace advantage.
Well, let's see if they do swap over easily.
I'm way quicker, I'm just in the dirty air.
We're going to swap positions.
And there you go, position swapped, and Lando Norris up in the second place. Now, while all this is happening, Max Verstappen has scampered off into the distance, and he's now 13 seconds or so out in front. But this is all about McLaren protecting themselves against the Mercedes in this race.
Yeah, which you can see there on the bottom of your screen, the graphics, 20 seconds is the gap between Lando Norris and George Russell, and that would have come down further and further, quicker than Lando would have wanted, being stuck behind his teammate.
Lap 27 out of 53, and we've got 4 cars out of this race. That's one of them. Sergio Perez is climbing back into his Red Bull. Are they going to send him out back into the race again? Have they managed to fix whatever was going on, and it's well worth a test session for the second half of this race? Do you remember Red Bull did that with Mark Webber once? They tried about 9 front wings during the course of a Japanese Grand Prix when he was way off the pace, and just kept him going and used it for development. But that'd be interesting if Perez comes back out onto the track. Logan Sargent is out of this race, and it seems his teammate Alex Albon is also going to retire, leaving 5 cars out. Bottas, Perez, Sargent and Albon, and Lance Stroll, who hasn't scored any points since the summer break and must be wishing he was still sat on a deck chair somewhere.
Well, I said it was going to be a race of attrition, but I meant the tyres, not the cars suffering too much damage. Such a shame for Williams this weekend, and they did have a pretty fast car.
I tell you what Red Bull might be doing, just as a little thought. Remember when Sergio Perez retired, he had a 5-second penalty for colliding with Kevin Magnussen. If they send him back out into the race, he'll serve his 5-second penalty at some stage, so nothing will then carry over to the next race. They might be protecting themselves against that. This is Fernando Alonso into the hairpin on Joe Guan Yu, the only Alfa Romeo still remaining in this race. That's how you do it, at the hairpin without any contact.
Yeah, Joe was anticipating that one as well, wasn't he? And to be fair, he made his life a lot easier than the race that we saw between Perez and Magnussen, but Alonso was further ahead, at least some of his car alongside before they even committed to the corner.
Double DNF then for Williams. Their last one was Singapore in 2022. Meanwhile, in the battle for third, Oscar Piastri struggling on his tyres somewhat compared to Charles Leclerc, who's striking distance in about 3 laps. Leclerc's on the medium, Piastri is on the hard compound tyre.
And already 2.5 seconds behind Norris.
They are going to send Sergio Perez, it seems, out into this race. And it wouldn't surprise me to send him out, serve the penalty, and then nothing gets carried on over into Qatar, where you don't want to be picking up a penalty there before you even start.
Give me the pace I need to achieve to fight with the guys ahead, to fight for a proper result.
Yeah, he's not interested in finishing.
Well, give us the pace then.
Yeah, maybe that'll come in the later message, and we'll have Bernie listening out as well on the team radios, just to make sure. But he's not interested in finishing P7 today, where he currently sits, and Hamilton is teammate in 6th. He wants a better result than that.
So let's just try and make this simple for people then, because, you know, back in the UK, it's 5 to 7 in the morning, and I like things to be simple at that time on a Sunday morning. Lando Norris is racing against George Russell here. Lando Norris might be 2nd, and George Russell might be 7th, but if he is going for a 1-stop, he doesn't have to pick up that extra 22 seconds that Lando Norris is going to pick up when he stops again. So it's all about managing the gap between Russell and Norris, which at the moment, Norris stopped, he'd come out behind George Russell, but then you offset it with fresher tyres later on.
I'm hearing 1 minute 37.8 from Bernie. Thank you very much. His last lap was a 1 minute 37.6.
Too fast.
Yeah, too fast. He's got time in the bag, George.
Take it easy. Take it easy, George. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz only separated by a couple of seconds on the racetrack. Meanwhile, back to Fernando Alonso, who somehow managed to get himself back up into the points again after stopping once more for a set of hard compound tyres. Good job he saved a couple. He's been in the pits twice already. Can he get these hard tyres to the end of the race? What is helping the cars at this stage, the drivers at this stage, track temperature is falling and the fuel is being burnt off too.
and more grip come into the track.
And it's Tsunoda. I think he's going to dispatch here. Well, Tsunoda's doing to Alonso what Alonso's done to about 3 others so far, and Alonso has seen how you manage to then overtake going in the spoon corner. So that's what he's trying to do up against Yuki Tsunoda, who first raced here when he was a 16-year-old lad, he was saying the other day. Loves coming back to Suzuka. Got a new contract in the bag for next year as well, but sadly for him, he hasn't got 2 points so far in this race. He's only got 1 because Alonso's moved up to 9th.
Yeah, those mediums starting to fade away, as you'd naturally expect compared to the hard tyres of Alonso. Even though Alonso's not entirely happy with his strategy, still able to make some positions up, and now he's got Pierre Gasly in front of him, 10 seconds or 10.5 seconds in front.
So what was that, 1:37.8 that George Russell has got to do? So Lando Norris, has he been told you've got to match those lap times? Because he pretty much did a 1:37.8 on the last lap.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking behind them as well as in front. The gap now continues to fall, just lost another second to Max Verstappen, so 14 seconds now. And so we've got an overtake here with Liam Lawson down the inside of the Haas into turn 1. Easy stuff there with the help of DRS.
Yes, Kevin Magnussen dropping back down again as Lawson tries to get himself back up into the points where he ran in the opening stages.
And he's got another Haas in front of him, hasn't he? Just 5 seconds in front. He's got to do it all over again. Here is your race leader. He is still on those medium tyres.
Yeah, and still in the race. We haven't seen him for a while.
Exactly. Neither of the others.
Nobody's seen him for a while. Zhou Guanyu might see him in a little bit because he's going to be lapped very, very shortly, I think, by Max Verstappen. As we see him going through turn 5, Lando Norris is just heading into turn 1. Norris in a battle with Russell, but Lewis Hamilton very much in the thick of things too, and currently running in 6th place. Longer Lewis stays out, delaying George, better it will be for Lewis when he gets onto his fresher tyres. So he needs to be a bit of a blockage to his teammate, if he can be, to protect his own, at the moment, 6th place and potentially more.
Yeah, I predict we're going to see Lewis hunting down George right to the last couple of laps of this race today. They're going to be fighting each other much later on, basically.
Ted Kravitz, as we ride on board in the Red Bull, down to you.
Right, I've been busy. I've left the pit lane, gone into the paddock to find Red Bull. And they are pitting, they are going to make Sergio Perez come back into the race so that he serves his penalty, Crofty. You're right.
That's a good guess, wasn't it?
They have been in contact with the FIA to square it away, to say, you know, are we allowed to do this? I mean, I know Red Bull are good with the rules and everything, but this is taking the biscuit, isn't it? The FIA have said, yeah, we think you are allowed to do it. So go for it, even though he hasn't been in the race for, what, 15 laps, Sergio? 10 laps?
Yeah. 7, yeah. He's 7 laps down.
Right, he's going to rejoin, do his penalties, say hello to people, wave, go quick, go slow, do a dance, I don't know what else, and then, I don't know, come back in or stay out if loads of other people retire. You might get a point. Well,
it's just
there you go. I've never seen it.
Yeah, neither have I, but it does give Sergio Perez the best chance to enjoy himself at the next race without having another penalty hanging over him for not serving a penalty.
But I've never seen those penalties hung over to the next race also.
No, but I'm assuming there's something in the sporting regulations that says you can, otherwise it wouldn't have prompted my attention. Go on, Ted, if you're not too busy, go and have a read of the sporting regs.
I mean, some of the stewards' decisions say, you know, the penalty at the next race to be served at the next race the driver does. But I've never known that to be subsequently held over if that driver retires. You know, what about Logan Sargent? He didn't serve either of his penalties as far as I know, did he? And he's retired from this race.
And he has retired from this race. I'll come back to you on that one. I've got a race to follow.
Me too. I'm going to go back to the pit lane.
Thanks ever so much, Ted. 32 out of 53 laps.
Okay, just for info, so we had a rear wing failure on the other car. Our car is all okay, and we can see it in data, so we're all okay. If you can minimise curves where possible.
That's one of those messages to a driver where you're trying to build up some confidence, but then just say, yeah, but if you could just stay off the bits that make it wobble a bit more, that'd be nice.
I've heard drive fast and take big risks before. I haven't heard drive fast and take no risks.
You have to take a few risks, don't you? How's Lewis Hamilton's pace, I wonder? 1:38.8 on the last lap. His teammate on fresher tyres, 0.8 faster. George Russell just over 4 seconds then behind Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton's enjoying this fight with the Ferraris in front of him, isn't he? He's on the better tyre at this stage, the hard tyre. He's brought that gap down from over 4 seconds to 3.9. He's just chipping away at it. Be interesting to see how far he can take this today.
And it's an important battle for Mercedes to try and maximise their points as well. They're in second place in the Constructors' Championship, ahead of Ferrari. At the moment, Ferrari scoring more points than Mercedes here today, but things could change around quite dramatically in the next 21 laps. One thing that looks pretty certain from here on in, unless there's any mechanical issues, is that Red Bull are going to be Constructors' Champions for a 6th time. They need to outscore Mercedes by 1 point and not be outscored by Ferrari by 24 points, and they are doing both of those things currently. What else is looking good is that McLaren, running 2nd and 3rd, are going to make another massive inroad into the gap between themselves and Aston Martin in the Constructors' Championship. Aston Martin, in the early part of the season, took the fight to Red Bull, but now are in danger of finishing 5th in the championship and don't seem to have the armoury at their disposal to fight the resurgence of McLaren, of Mercedes and also Ferrari, because those 3 teams seem to have developed a lot better as the season has gone on. Bernie Collins at Sky Race Control.
So just on the regulations, just to read out what it says very quickly if I can without getting it wrong, but it says if any of the 4 penalties involved, which includes what Perez has,
5 seconds,
are imposed on a driver and that driver is unable to serve the penalty due to retirement from the race, the stewards may impose a grid penalty on the driver at his next race. So that's what they're trying to avoid.
I'm amazed you found time to go into the sporting regs on that one.
It's 54.3.
the ultimate multitasker, Bernie Collins. Thank you so much for that. I knew there was something in the regs about it. Right, 15 seconds, the gap out in front. Verstappen over Norris. Piastri has dropped back bit by bit in 3rd place at the moment, and lapping faster than Charles Leclerc in 4th on the medium tyres. Is Leclerc starting to struggle on his medium somewhat? Carlos Sainz 2 seconds behind his teammate, lapping round about the same lap times. And now comes Lewis Hamilton, who, as you can see, 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, where he moved into 3rd after Singapore for the first time since Bahrain 2022, and he did it at the expense of this man, Fernando Alonso, who is currently trying to hunt down Pierre Gasly, and after stopping for a 2nd time in this race, round about a second a lap, or 0.6 of a second a lap faster than Gasly.
Hamilton now only 3.3 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. He can see them quite clearly in front of him. It's always nice when you're in the car. It's just that carrot you need just to spur you on that little bit extra.
So current models have us under pressure end of race. So if there is any more pace in that, it would be helpful.
So look after your tyres and go fast.
Yeah, exactly, but his pace has dropped off to a 38.1. We knew it was a 37.8 that the team were targeting. That's what that message was all about.
Bernie.
Yeah, I think that they, at the moment, Norris would come out behind him when he pits, and we're expecting Norris to pit again, and that's who they're fighting at the end of the race. So they're thinking they can get all the way to P2 when they box again, just can they hold on to it?
So, in this race, Verstappen will pit again, because he's run medium, and you have to run, Leclerc might be coming in, and you have to run 2 different types of dry compound tyre. Leclerc is pitting, Sainz should pit again. We're expecting Norris and Piastri to pit again. Russell could go to the end of the race. Could Hamilton go to the end of the race, or is that asking way too much? No, it's Lewis Hamilton's coming in, even as I asked that question.
And that's why they pitted Leclerc. Yeah. They didn't want to be undercut by Hamilton, being just 4 seconds behind Leclerc.
A great stop time there for Ferrari, 2.2 seconds. And Lewis Hamilton's lost 0.8 to Charles Leclerc in that pit stop by being stationary for just that little bit longer. This is Fernando Alonso heading towards turn 1. Hamilton is out safely ahead of Alonso in 7th place. So Ferrari, wary of the undercuts, decided to come in. Mercedes, realising they had to pit at the same time, boxing as well.
So that was Leclerc that boxed. What about Sainz? Because Hamilton was closer to Sainz, obviously, than he was to Leclerc. It'd be interesting to see if they, I'm sure they're going to pit Sainz this lap.
Well, Piastri is going to box as well. They're going to react to that to McLaren to protect him. Carlos Sainz was probably out of undercut range from Lewis Hamilton, but his teammate Charles Leclerc, well, he was ahead of him anyway, should get ahead after these pit stops.
But this needs to be the outlap of all outlaps if you're Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. and not helped by the fact that you're still stuck behind Charles Leclerc. Right, Verstappen's gone through past the line. Norris has gone through past the line. Coming into the pits now is Oscar Piastri. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Okay, so the earlier stop, do you remember at the time of the virtual safety car? So that didn't really work in that his tyres were older than Lando's, and Lando was able to overtake. This stop needs to be perfect. They all need to be perfect. A little bit slower than a getaway, but that's pretty good as the front jack got out of the way for Oscar Piastri. Let's see what he can do in this next stint.
So Piastri pits, Carlos Sainz stays out, and our Ferrari thinking we're not at risk from the undercut from Mercedes and from Lewis Hamilton. Well, we'll find out if they are at risk when Carlos Sainz eventually does stop. But Sainz moves up into third, George Russell fourth, Piastri now fifth, Charles Leclerc sixth, and Lewis Hamilton seventh. And any of those could be battling away for potentially the final podium place here.
The only thing I can think, Crofty, is that Ferrari, they wanted to protect the car that was in front, i.e. Leclerc, and I feel like they've missed the moment with Sainz.
Gasly makes a move on Nico Hülkenberg and moves up into the points. That's the 10th spot there for Pierre Gasly, who's had one of those frustrating weekends so far, but with 5 drivers out, is looking for a potential points reward that at many times has not seemed that likely for him. You think is though, they might get undercut, but Sainz will be on slightly fresher tyres. Is track position that vital here?
It depends, as you see Lando Norris come into the pit box now, pit lane, sorry, and yeah, so this is, it's all about that potential threat from George Russell. So they have obviously the luxury of another set of hard tyres. I'm sure we're going to see go on here. Yes, they are down in McLaren. That, look, you have to look all the way back to FP1, Crofty.
Yeah.
This is where it all starts, where your strategy begins. So they've saved themselves as there is Russell going past, but obviously on much older tyres. I am sure he's not going to hang on to this, but for what it's worth, he's got track position.
You know, you were...
Because we've been undercut, yeah?
Yes, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, so they knew it. That's why they've left Sainz out there to offset themselves now, to hopefully come back at Hamilton later on in the race with better tyres.
Now, you know you were looking for the outlap of all outlaps from Lewis Hamilton. Well, there he goes with the fastest lap. I know it's not his outlap, it's the second one, but he's responded, and that's is some pace that he's got over Charles Leclerc. Now they're both on the hard compound tyre. Red Bull are going to file out into the sunshine of the pit lane, and Max Verstappen is going to come in at any moment now. He's just approaching the final chicane, whilst we look at Lando Norris going through the hairpin, and Lando Norris right behind George Russell.
I'm not sure this is going to work for George. I think the tyre deg was too high. I think he was maybe a little bit too optimistic on those mediums as Max Verstappen on his mediums comes in.
Did he call it though? Did George Russell say, think about a plan B here? And was that what swayed Mercedes?
Like I said, he was the one that had the feeling in the car. He had to try something. He was confident at the time, and he can't stick to the lap time that the team wanted. As a set of hards go on. I was caught out by that red stripe they have on their wheel.
When are they going to send Sergio Perez out? He's been sat in that car now for about 10 minutes.
Sitting there thinking, is this penalty time enough? 5 seconds? I'll give you 5 minutes.
Yeah. He's got to come on the track for that penalty. George Russell hasn't got fresh tyres. We know that. Lando Norris has. Lando Norris can almost wave at his friend there as he moves back up into the podium places. Norris has stopped twice in this race. Ahead of him, Carlos Sainz has only stopped once, and Max Verstappen has stopped twice and is still in the lead of this race, enjoying a very comfortable return to leading a race, and something that he didn't experience, of course, in Singapore, which looks like being a little temporary blip, doesn't it, in the Verstappen Red Bull domination for this year.
Yeah, back in his happy place. Where he's performed best this year, when he's out in front with no pressure.
Box is the message for Carlos Sainz. Has the moment come and gone though for Carlos Sainz?
Well, it has. He'll clearly be behind Lewis Hamilton when he comes out, but he'll have fresher tyres offset by 4 laps, I believe, and it might just be enough.
As Nico Hülkenberg pits from the lower reaches of this race. And it's a race that we saw high drama right at the start, And contact where there was a little bit of damage on the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, where there's a lot of damage on Sergio Perez, where Carlos Sainz was getting involved in the skirmishes too, as we ride on board with him, and where Max Verstappen almost got overtaken by Lando Norris, but survived that and has looked pretty comfortable out in front ever since. Oscar Piastri did get overtaken by his teammate. Piastri and Norris a little bit offset currently, and we'll see how that pans out with the two McLaren drivers come the end of the race.
As you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, Lewis tackling the final chicane as Carlos Sainz hasn't even peeled off into the pit box yet. So he's going to be quite some way behind distance-wise, but will be coming back out, Lewis, once he gets back out there on that fresh set.
And it's the hard compound tyre for Sainz, and has to be, because he's run 2 mediums in this race so far. He comes out ahead of Fernando Alonso, and eventually Sergio Perez gets some driving done rather than just sat in his Red Bull.
Yeah, they were waiting just for that final pit stop of Max Verstappen to be complete, to give the team a bit more focus and less pressure, because there is no pressure now in getting that second car out there.
It must be a horrible feeling for Sergio Perez. There's his teammate dominating this race once again. Sergio picking up damage, picking up penalties, and the reason they're sending him back out into this race is so he can serve a 5-second penalty for his incident colliding into Kevin Magnussen.
And they're going to wait. They're watching the circuit map, as I am right now, of Verstappen going through the final chicane. They don't want to send him out there unnecessarily in front of the race leader and the sister car.
Started this race 43 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton in second place in the championship. Hamilton's going to make a little inroad into Sergio Perez's advantage. There's a lot of points to be gained between now and the end of the season, and that battle for second in the Drivers' Championship might be quite keenly fought given the way Mercedes are performing and the way Perez, well, not picking up points this weekend and can't afford to have too many like this. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
And there's also a good battle for 8th, 9th and 10th between Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, and it's going better for Alonso now. He's holding off Ocon and Gasly behind, but Ocon and Gasly with a more sort of equal pit stop strategy, so Ocon might be able to close on Alonso. Alonso's made his pit stops quite quickly. The Alpines have spaced them out as Sergio Perez goes out again. Crofty, I once took part in a go-kart race where I was like this. I clumped into people, made a bit of an embarrassment of myself. I was naughty. I had some other people off the track. They called me in, sat me in the pits for a while, gave me a talking to, and then they let me rejoin. I didn't have to serve any penalties that day, but that's a bit like... I'm getting vibes from that karting day. And it wasn't the karting day when I had you off either. It was a different one.
Yeah, well, you should have got a massive penalty for that.
I'm getting those kind of vibes with what Sergio Perez is doing today.
I think Perez is going to be having words with you, Ted, after this race.
Exactly.
Comparing him to you in a fun car race.
I'm just saying, I've never seen it. I've never seen that before. It just reminds me of when I'm sure many of our viewers would have had the same experience.
Right, George Russell is having a defending experience here, and a defending experience where his tyres are offering little or no stickiness up against the young Australian Oscar Piastri, whose tyres are offering him an awful lot more grip. And you rather get the feeling that with some DRS, if Oscar's got it down the main straight, it's going to be quite tight going into turn 1. We're on board with George Russell, and we can see Piastri getting closer, and he has got DRS as Oscar Piastri. George Russell's looking which way to defend and makes his car as wide as possible, heading into turn 2 where the beehives of Sebastian Vettel are planted, and as we say that, Oscar Piastri swarming all over George Russell currently. Oh, they're bringing Sergio Perez in for a pit stop. He has, by the way, 7 of the 15, 7 pit stops that have been fastest in the 15 races so far this season. So they're going to have another pit stop, and this ain't going to be the fastest because he's having a 5-second penalty before they do anything.
So Piastri's riding on board with him now. You can see George Russell in front. He's realised that the pace of the Mercedes is pretty comparable down that main straight, and he wasn't quite close enough last time around exiting that final chicane. So he's got to think about how he can get closer this time around, and it all begins here at the spoon curve coming up. If you can focus on getting a clean exit out of this one, you can get slightly closer into the slipstream of that Mercedes. You go up the hill through 130R, which will still be easily flat out in the slipstream. Can you even mount a challenge on the braking zone towards the chicane? He looks much closer this time. You got to time it right and pick your moment into the chicane or out of the chicane.
Well, he picked his moment there, but he just ran out of room to do it.
Russell's got it covered. He crosses the line over, and what he's going to do is get a better exit, a straighter exit here. Now, is he close enough? The traction seems very good still from that Mercedes. And I'm not sure he's going to do, he's catching. He's going to go to the inside, is Russell to defend. Can we go around the outside? Yes, he does. Nicely done by Piastri. And it all started at that spoon curve.
Oscar Piastri moves up then into third place, and whilst George Russell would have been using a bit of ERS as electrical energy to power his car down the straights, it wasn't enough with the 14 kilometres an hour of DRS advantage that Oscar Piastri had to preserve that third place. Russell down into fourth. We can have a look at it again. Piastri thought there was a move on here. He needed just a little bit more track before the chicane.
Well, what it was, he wanted to cross the line.
Well, yeah, afterwards, to get that slipstream, to get the toe, to get the overtake done.
Yeah, he knew it was going to come down to turn one. Once Russell was on the inside into the chicane, he knew that he was going to have to let Russell go through on the inside, but then cross over his line to do the same thing on the exit of the second part of the chicane. It was a really nice move. You know, that's some great racing, and shows that Piastri's got a good understanding of where he could utilise the speed of that car. But next up, it's Charles Leclerc's turn.
Just about to say, Charles Leclerc is now in striking position. Lewis Hamilton will be in striking position soon as well. And you get the feeling that this brave one-stop strategy, eventually George is going to have to pit, put on some soft tyres, try and go for a fastest lap when they can find a gap. And before this race, Red Bull had the only 100% finishing record in Formula One this season. That's gone now, with Perez officially now retiring from this race. Verstappen, though, out in the lead, 16.5 seconds. Then comes Norris and Piastri, then Russell and Leclerc. But is it Leclerc and Russell? No. Going into turn one. It's a deceptive camera angle. You think he's just going to make the move on the inside. Nothing doing on that particular occasion.
Made you flinch that, didn't it?
It did.
A bit too close for comfort, but yeah, in the same way that Piastri was close, but not quite close enough the lap before, it's going to boil down to this lap here for Leclerc. So he's got the speed, and I think the Ferrari's got naturally a little bit more straight line speed, even compared to the McLaren. So yeah, it should be a little bit more comfortable for Leclerc. And for George, every lap that goes on, you get closer and closer to the cliff, as they call it, or the drop of performance of the tyre. Suddenly, they call it the cliff because suddenly you just lose so much grip.
I think that cliff's coming. 138.5 last lap for George Russell. His teammate Lewis Hamilton at 137.4. We're on board with Charles Leclerc now, heading towards Spoon Curve. And if there's nothing doing in trying to get past here, there's certainly a slipstream to be had on the straight leading to the next chicane. Leclerc, who's finished second on the road here in last season, demoted to third after a 5-second penalty because there was a tangle with Sergio Perez at the chicane, which will come our way after 130R. Just enjoy this moment. Flat through 130R. I still think it's absolutely fantastic what these cars can achieve. Into the chicane we go, and now he's got to get a good exit, has Charles Leclerc. Decent traction as they plunge downhill to make his move on George Russell. He's got DRS, the rear wing open as he gains. And which way can he go? Which way is there a move? He has to stay behind the gearbox once again, George Russell.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't make his way through that time. He couldn't even follow as closely as Piastri could on the exit of the Spoon Curve, and that's what's doing the damage. So clearly the car's working in a different way here at Suzuka, and it might be more difficult than I first thought, and from what Charles first thought as well. He's got the speed on the straight, but not in the high-speed corners.
If there was a safety car, we could pit soft, but you would give up 3 positions. Feedback?
Yeah, I would pit.
Go for it. Yeah, that's the right call. We've seen too many times, haven't we, how vulnerable you are at the end of a race when there's a safety car and others are around you with fresh tyres. Even if they're out of position, they're going to pass you, no problem.
Went into this race, Oscar Piastri, just 3 points off the top 10 in the championship. He's going to move into the top 10 after this race, and in his rookie season, what an exceptional achievement that will be. Right, battle resumed once again. Here comes Charles Leclerc for part 2 on the parts of the track where overtaking is possible and defending is that little bit harder. And he seems a little bit closer, I think, to George Russell as we go towards 130R. Now, there's no move like Lewis Hamilton pulled on Fernando Alonso through 130R. Might be a move into the chicane, late braking, not quite. So he's going to have to do it with DRS once again down the main straight. This is rather hurting Charles Leclerc's race currently as he tries to get somewhere near Oscar Piastri, but he wants to get past George Russell. He's got the move into turn 1 on, if he can make it stick. He's going round the outside, George Russell on the inside. We're riding on board with Charles Leclerc, who just squeezes ahead of George Russell and deserves the applause from every single one of the fans. Banked around the outside at turn 2. That was bravery and trust in your rival, and Charles Leclerc pulled it off to move up into 4th.
That was brilliant stuff there by Charles Leclerc and from George Russell. To be fair to George, you know, he did give room around the outside for Leclerc, and I think I could just see George's car from that onboard shot from Leclerc. I could just see it hovering on the inside the whole time. Hovering through B corner. See what I've done there?
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Any B gags are always good with me. Any overtakes are always good with me. And this is Charles Leclerc on George Russell. We saw it from Leclerc's point of view, and we're going to see it again.
This is a shot we've already seen. I want to see the off-board shot because that will show the two cars completely side by side at this moment here. And George wasn't giving up yet. I'm sure I could just see it.
Here we go. As they come out of the first turn.
Wow, that was great racing. George gave him just enough room, just enough.
Did he go off the track? I'm only asking, because did he go off the track to get that move completed? Was he already ahead?
I think he might. I was watching the gap between the two cars, so yeah, maybe Karun will have a look on the SkyPad after the race, who knows.
In the Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen has the considerable points advantage over his teammate, 177, I make that. It means that if Max goes on to win today, that a podium finish in the sprint, he could win the championship in the Qatar sprint. Yeah, Verstappen could win this championship on a Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. Red Bull could win this championship on a Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, this Sunday. It's all just been heading to that conclusion pretty much since the opening race of the season. They've won every single one of the races bar one, and they have that healthy lead in the Constructors' Championship. Verstappen will have to wait until Qatar, but as I said, he could seal it in the sprint race in Qatar. So don't miss that.
Here is Lewis Hamilton. He can see George Russell again in this race.
So what do Mercedes do? Do they just say to George, don't fight this? We need Lewis to be chasing after Charles Leclerc. Don't hold him up.
Well, I mean, they've let them race the whole race, and they offset their strategies. And I would say at this point, they haven't made progress as a team. They've overtaken one of the Ferraris, but let them race. There's enough of a tyre offset that I don't think it's going to really come to blows this time.
Yeah, but I do disagree with what you're saying, because race control have just noted Charles Leclerc for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. So if you now had Lewis Hamilton ahead of George Russell, he's locked up as Lewis Hamilton.
I think he's made the corner though, yeah.
You can't really then give the place back, and it might lead to a penalty. I'm just talking, tactics. If you were Mercedes, surely you'd invert the cars right now, but they're not doing that. Lewis Hamilton's a bit too far back anyway, even with the DRS.
And I wouldn't say that George pushed him off the track either.
Just make sure you give each other plenty of room.
Says Pete Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer. Just looking Esteban Ocon ahead of Liam Lawson, who's now got Yuki Tsunoda right behind him. That opening lap battle that we saw between Lawson and Tsunoda might be carrying on for a few laps right at the end of this race too. No further investigation, say the stewards. Charles Leclerc for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. So it's as you were with the two Mercedes drivers. As we head towards the hairpin now, Lewis Hamilton seems a little bit too far back, and he's got Carlos Sainz right on his tail. Ted, down to you.
So this Lawson-Tsunoda battle, round 6, has been going on for quite a few laps now. I've been following it, and Liam Lawson's engineer has been giving him all sorts of tips to stay ahead of Tsunoda. So last time round, Lawson did actually undercut Tsunoda. Remember, it was the other way round, Crofty, in the first stops. So, yeah, there really is a very keen fight between the two teammates at AlphaTauri. But if Mercedes are going to make the swap, they need to do it now, really, because otherwise they're going to run out of laps to try and chase down Leclerc. There is pace in this Mercedes to get Leclerc, but if they need to get it on the car with the fresher tyres, they need to make the swap now.
Can't really compare this race to Singapore, Ant, but of course in the closing stages at Singapore, George Russell was ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who was the faster of the two Mercedes at that stage, and we know how that ended. Hamilton is once again the faster of the two Mercedes because he's had two stops here, and Russell is trying to make a one-stop strategy work. Difficult here to order George Russell to let Lewis Hamilton pass because he's going to allow Carlos Sainz now to breeze past him again if he does that. So
yeah, Lewis is going to have to think about this.
Yeah, we're going to lose both these positions.
Hamilton just feels a little bit under threat from that Ferrari behind, and this is all important. It really is. Mercedes don't want to be losing any positions to Ferrari here because the two teams are chasing second in the Constructors' Championship, and that second might be a battle for runners-up, but it means extra prize money for the team at the end of the season. We'll just head to Bernie Collins in 2 seconds as we watch Carlos Sainz approaching Lewis Hamilton into the hairpin. Sainz doesn't make the lunge. Lewis Hamilton can't make the move on George Russell, but this is just getting a little bit tense, I think, now with 5 laps to go. Bernie Collins, down to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to listen to the two Mercedes. It's difficult with a lot going on, but I think Russell was told to switch the cars, and Russell said, repeat.
We'll invert positions. Be careful of Sainz with DRS though.
Why don't we invert on the last lap? And he just keeps the DRS like last week. Unless he's fighting for a bigger result.
So it's an instruction, George. Swap positions.
I think George is right here. Do it on the last lap because Lewis has got the protection with the DRS of the Ferrari behind. That's what George was referring to. Look what they did. Look what that guy did last week. And that's what I can do for Lewis. He's not going to overtake Leclerc. I'll protect him by him using DRS here.
Yeah, we'll go back to that in a moment. For the moment, Lewis Hamilton has got the DRS and they have inverted it. Mercedes have allowed Lewis Hamilton to get past George Russell, who is now going to have to defend against Carlos Sainz. The instruction came from the pit wall, maybe because they still think Lewis Hamilton's got a chance of getting at Charles Leclerc, or maybe because they just think he's the faster driver, he should be ahead.
He was falling back from Leclerc anyway, even before he joined the back of this fight, and now this leaves Russell massively vulnerable to Carlos Sainz, who will easily blast past. So I think
was that the wrong decision?
It was. I think George was right. He just didn't had enough pace to stay ahead of Lewis, and Lewis not to be under attack because Lewis was getting given DRS.
And doing to Lewis what Carlos Sainz did for Lando Norris
and he was, what he was saying, I'll let him by. I'll do it on the last lap.
If you want to play the team game, he put us off the track earlier, at least he can do.
And George still a little bit sore from that incident at Spoon Corner, which we're coming to now, where Lewis Hamilton was on the inside, Carlos Sainz was on the outside, and both Mercedes managed to head off onto the runoff area.
Yeah, he's probably going to get overtaken this time around, either into the chicane.
So we need to give George DRS. Let's help him along.
Understood, understood.
Ah, so that's the game they were playing. Invert the positions and then give George the DRS. He's so vulnerable here. Sainz can't do it at this point. George desperately needs the DRS now. Lewis has backed off enough, but he hasn't got the traction. Well, Lewis he just hasn't got the traction.
No, he hasn't. Mercedes have created this problem then, and he has got DRS at least as George Russell, but Sainz on fresher tyres has got better grip. Carlos Sainz is going to get past George Russell down into turn 1, and that just seems... It seems a decision that was made that was always going to lead to problems if the intention was for Lewis to help George Russell along, and it remained stalemate. Why make the change in the first place?
I guess Mercedes were just worried that Carlos was going to find his way past Hamilton and then do this to George without DRS. Would have been even easier. So I think they were...
Damn if they do, damn if they don't.
They were looking at it from worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Whereas George was looking at it a different way. Look, let me stay in front. I've kind of got Lewis covered here, and he's got Carlos covered. He's got better tyres than me. He's getting a better exit out of the chicane than I'll ever have at this stage in the race, and that's doubly protecting Lewis. So, yeah, you're kind of leaving me more, there's more risk of me getting overtaken than there was Lewis, basically.
I was just wondering if they could now pit George Russell and try and go for the fastest lap. which currently been held by Max Verstappen, who, by the way, his best lap of the race is currently a second quicker than any other driver. But I think Fernando Alonso is too close behind George Russell, so they can't even do that to try and give themselves an extra point in this race. Not long to go here for your driver of the day. There's one driver that has dominated, and it's Max Verstappen. He's not led from start to finish, but he's never looked anything but a race winner this afternoon. Lando Norris looks like he's going to...
They're using my trick against me. Yeah, old school pass, good job, head down. Now I'm going to go and get him.
Well, he was a tenth faster on the previous lap, needs to be about half a second faster, and then the same again to try and get towards Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, Lando Norris, who in his career has finished second in Italy in 2021, and then Silverstone, Hungary and Singapore this year, could be on for a fifth second place finish in Formula One without picking up a win. Oscar Piastri is heading for his first podium.
Wasted all that time for no reason.
Heading for his first podium in a Grand Prix in his rookie season in what is his 16th race in Formula One, going one better than his fourth place at Silverstone. Behind them comes Charles Leclerc, pretty much racing on his own now in fourth place. And then Lewis Hamilton, who's got to defend against Carlos Sainz, who has now got within a second of that Mercedes.
Yeah, we expected it, didn't we, at the end of the race? As we said, you know, Hamilton would be fighting his teammate once again on better tyres, and with the offset, Sainz would be coming back at Lewis, who wasn't helped with that situation with Russell, who's now 6 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. It was 3 seconds when Leclerc came out after his last pit stop. So what can Carlos Sainz do? He's determined to go and get Lewis. Ferrari had to do what they did at the time. They had to protect their lead car, i.e. Charles Leclerc, and nothing they could do in that situation. They were always going to get undercut, one of their cars, by Lewis.
4 laps fresher tyres for Carlos Sainz in his battle with Lewis Hamilton, and it's a battle that is going right to the line. They were barely separated by much in Singapore 7 days ago, but that was Carlos Sainz winning and Lewis Hamilton joining him on the podium in third place. This battle is for fifth in a Japanese Grand Prix that is going to see Red Bull get their sixth Constructors' Championship.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, I wish it was. in their history. And Max Verstappen is about to start his final lap of this race. 9/10 of a second the difference between Hamilton and Sainz, and crucially for Hamilton, Sainz isn't close enough into the hairpin here.
I don't expect he will be, Crofty. I think you need to have around 1 second advantage pace-wise of the car that you're fighting to overtake on track with similar age tyres. And I don't think Sainz has quite got that over Lewis.
This is going to be a 28th win since the start of last season for Max Verstappen. That would actually put him 9th on the all-time list of most Formula One wins. It is going to be a 13th win of the season for Max Verstappen, which will be tied for the second most in any season between Sebastian Vettel and Michael Schumacher. But it's going to be a very, very special win, not just for Max Verstappen, but for his Red Bull team. Here at Hondaland, Suzuka in Hondaland, where the Honda Corporation celebrating their 75th anniversary today. Honda, who have helped develop the power units that is powering Max Verstappen and Red Bull to the top of the Constructors' Championship, and the top of a championship that no one will be able to pass them in about 1.5 kilometres time. 47 career wins, a season where Red Bull have absolutely dominated. Since the start of testing, this has been the car to beat. It's a car that the others haven't been able to beat, apart from that night in Singapore last week. And it's a car that's going to celebrate a Constructors' Championship. Max Verstappen rounds the final corner. He comes home to win the Japanese Grand Prix, and Red Bull can start the celebrations for a sixth Constructors' Championship, a second consecutive Constructors' Championship, and a job very well done. Now behind Red Bull, what a race for McLaren. What a brilliant race for Lando Norris, who comes home to finish in second place and equal his best in Formula One. but at a time very much in keeping for watching Formula One at the right time of the day. Australia is about to rise for its latest podium finisher as Oscar Piastri, for the first time in Formula One, comes home to take third place and stand on the podium. Behind the top three, Charles Leclerc racing to the line to take fourth place. Lewis Hamilton holding off Carlos Sainz to take fifth. Sainz sixth. George Russell tried to make the one-stop work, the only one to try and make the one-stop work. It didn't quite happen for him. He comes home in seventh, ahead of Fernando Alonso, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. Liam Lawson just misses out on the points. Red Bull really haven't missed a trick when it comes to points and wins this season. They are Constructors' champions.
It's class, Max. Well done.
Let's go, guys. Another win. Unbelievable.
Max, that was absolutely fantastic. That was 19.4 ahead of the rest of the field, and that wins us our 6th Constructors World Championship. So congratulations, and thank you very much. You were totally awesome and dominant this weekend.
Yeah, unbelievable, guys. You deserve that. What an unbelievable season we're having. You can all be very proud. Here at the track, back at the factory. Everyone, unbelievable. You guys built a rocket ship of a car. Well done.
Yeah, total domination really by Red Bull this season. And like you said, what a car they've built. And gives them an advantage as well going into next season, because you can start to turn your attention to that much earlier when you've got this kind of advantage over the field. But you know, hats off to McLaren as well. A great performance by them today. 19 seconds is all that they finished behind. We expected 30.
Yeah. That's how we do it. Congratulations, guys. Incredible job all weekend. And if I'm reading the TV right, I'll skip P3 or not.
Yep, that's correct. P2, P3.
Incredible. Well done, everyone. Insane. Double podium. 2 of us up there. We're coming. We're coming for Red Bull. Let's keep up the work. Incredible. Thank you to everyone in the factory. Everyone here at trackside. Love you all so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and in a great place at the moment, aren't they? The drivers at McLaren, Oscar Piastri, brilliant podium for him today, his first ever podium in Formula One, and driver of the day. I think that's pretty fitting. I'd say he's driver of the day.
That is P3, buddy. Great job.
Woo. Well done, everyone. Remember that for a long time.
Driver of the day, I'd say driver of the week was this guy here, Max Verstappen.
Led
absolutely
FP1,
dominant.
led FP2, led FP3, led Q3, led the race. Max Verstappen. And because his teammate Sergio Perez retired from the race, he can now win a 3rd championship in Qatar in the sprint race. Get it all done on a Saturday, put his feet up on a Sunday, should he so wish. Max Verstappen in celebratory mood once again. Never led a lap of the dry here at Suzuka before. He led pretty much all of it today. And a 35th consecutive race finish as well, which I think is the 2nd longest streak in Formula One history. While Verstappen celebrates, just to let you know, Esteban Ocon got ahead of Pierre Gasly on the last lap. I wonder if that was inverted by the team on that one. The 6 seconds Ocon was faster on that last lap.
Also looking further down the field, another team powered by Honda, their home circuit, of course, is Liam Lawson. Beat Yuki Tsunoda. They've been waiting down there, AlphaTauri, to see how Lawson would get on with Tsunoda over the whole race distance, because Tsunoda hasn't finished, or hasn't even really started the last 2. So they found it quite hard to judge Liam Lawson's performance. Today, Tsunoda was right there with him, finished just behind him, 8 tenths, and Lawson held him off to the line. Great job by him.
And the World Champions banners are out down at Red Bull. 2010, 2011, 2012 and 13, 2022 and 2023. Elsewhere in the Constructors' Championship, the gap between Mercedes in 2nd and Ferrari in 3rd now just 20 points. And the gap between Aston Martin and McLaren down to 49 points. getting very, very tight behind Red Bull and Max Verstappen.
It's what we've been saying all season so far, isn't it? Take this guy that we see on screen out of the equation, and it's excellent racing.
And Lewis Hamilton, after finishing 5th today, now just 33 points behind Sergio Perez. Red Bull have never had a 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship, and Lewis Hamilton is going to keep them interested and keen, I think, in that between now and the finale in Abu Dhabi. I know you drivers say we don't race for second place, but you've got to win small victories from time to time, and I think if Lewis Hamilton had finished second in the championship this year, given where the car was at the start and the changes and the development that's been made, that would be a very satisfactory outcome for him.
Yeah, it will be, absolutely. You're always looking to maximise your performance from your car, and I feel like Hamilton did that today. A bit of a sticky situation at the start of the race, some contact, and then a hard-fought race early on with his teammate. But I really feel like Mercedes did the best they could today with the package they had, and hopefully moving forward they can be a bit closer to Red Bull. But Red Bull, 6 Constructors World Championships, and they're closing in on Mercedes' record of 8, aren't they?
They certainly are. Oscar Piastri joins an illustrious band of Australians on the podium, and he's going to be interviewed now by a man who won a World Championship here, Damon Hill.
Oscar Piastri, congratulations, your first ever Formula 1 podium. You put yourself, Melbourne and Australia up there. What have you got to say?
Yeah, thank you very much. It feels pretty special, definitely. I remember it for a very, very long time, so I can't thank the team enough for giving me this opportunity. You know, there's not many people in the world that get this opportunity in their whole life, and I've managed to have it in my first season. So thank you very much to the team. Wasn't my best race ever, but it was enough to get a trophy at the end. So yeah, super happy.
You're a little disappointed perhaps to come second with your to your teammate, but some tight racing there, which is exciting for us anyway. Any moments of concerns during that?
Yeah, the move on George, I knew I had to try and get past, otherwise I was going to get stuck for a while. So yeah, that one was a bit close, but no, that pace after that was very strong, and I think in the second half of the race I got more into a groove, more into a rhythm, and the pace was a bit better. So yeah, very, very happy, and yeah, excited to try and get some more.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be celebrating a team result there, fantastic team result for your team, so well done on your first podium.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you.
Well done, Lando. You managed to pip. Well done, Lando. You managed to pip your teammate and very nearly Max Verstappen in the start there. Yeah. Some tight moments, but some great racing. And it worked out tactically as well for you.
Yeah, another amazing day for us, a P2 and a P3, so couldn't have asked for any more. The team did an amazing job. My start was very good. I almost had Max, but Max is Max as well, so I didn't have a lot of chance into turn 2. So I tried, but the pace was extremely strong today, comparing to everyone. And I mean, we're not close to Max, but we're not miles away either. So it was a very good day. I'm very happy also for Oscar, his first podium in Formula 1. So congrats to him.
We're getting closer all the time, so maybe the next one's going to be one better than that. The position you got.
I mean, we're pushing. We're getting there. The progress he made is pretty outstanding. So, like I said, I'm very proud of the team. The steps forward we're making every weekend. I'm sure there's going to be some tough times to come, but we're getting there step by step. And our first double podium together with Oscar. So yeah, a good moment for us.
Great race. Many congratulations, Lando.
Cheers, sir. Thank you.
Max, back to winning ways. Absolutely superb performance all weekend, totally dominant, emphatic, and also you've helped your team secure its 6th Constructors title. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, yeah, unbelievable weekend, of course, and to win here was great. I think the car was working really well on every compound, but of course the most important was also to win the Constructors. So yeah, very proud of everyone working at the track, but also back at the factory. I mean, yeah, we are having an incredible year, and I'm very proud of everyone.
It looked very smooth. Were there any moments of concern? You had a bit of a tight one at the start there, going into turn 1.
Only the start, probably a bit too much wheel spin, but after that it was quite a straightforward race, luckily.
Congratulations. Thank you. Well done to you and Red Bull.
Straightforward race. Yeah, we've heard him say that a couple of times or more so far this season. Damon Hill conducting the interviews, and he's with Christian Horner.
Christian Horner, congratulations for your team. Fantastic effort. Milton Keynes is celebrating, I bet, back there in England and the UK, but it's hard work becoming a Constructors' Championship. You've done it 6 times now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the most amazing race for us, the most amazing year, and it's all testimony to these guys and all the men and women back in the factory in Milton Keynes, and you know, to Red Bull, to all our partners. It's the collection of an incredible effort of everybody doing their bit to achieve results like we've done, and of course, you know, Max is just on another level at the moment. So today was an incredible performance.
Not such a good day for Checo. I mean, it was a bit of a mare for him.
Yeah.
But even despite that, you managed to secure the championship. But what has he got? What was actually the problem with that side of things? I mean, not enough front wings by the looks of things.
Yeah, he went for a few front wings today. I mean, from the very start, he got knocked around a bit, and then obviously picked up a penalty, and obviously the move on Kevin Magnussen. It wasn't his day, but he'll bounce back at the next race, and you know, he's a big part of the success as well.
And I'm sure your power unit Honda will be very pleased as well. 75 years since the company started to win a victory here as well at their circuit. Tremendous. Maybe
yeah, it's been a great partner for us, and it's very fitting to win this championship here with Honda in front of all the fans here, and the support we've had the whole weekend has just been phenomenal.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Once upon a time, drivers were comparing that Honda power unit to a GP2 engine. I don't think they're going to do that now.
It's come a long way since those days, hasn't it?
Back in the days when Fernando Alonso was racing for McLaren, but let's have a listen to their drivers with Max now.
Yeah, look,
this was a bit tight.
Yeah, because I had Lando coming towards me.
I have no chance, that's so much understeer.
It's
It's
not all
so hard.
equipment then too.
I was like,
Yeah.
It took them forever.
Oh my god.
It took them
it's carnage, you know.
Took a while, yeah?
This is going to be like on Max's podcast, New edition. To McLaren drivers.
I don't even like podcasts.
On Max's podcast.
Jeez.
You got out the gravel?
Ah!
Nice.
Interesting. Oh. Is this at the end? You finished ahead. George did a one stop, huh?
Yeah. To be honest, at one point I thought he was going to make it work.
Beautiful. Look at that.
I tried to get him into the lascia cane.
I see, I was watching on the TV.
I tried, but I couldn't do it.
As a debrief, I always enjoy hearing the top 3 after the race.
It's always nice, you know, they're the only people in the world that can share that experience with you. So you've all been out there feeling the same thing. You heard them talking about the understeer in turn 2 and the lack of grip on that first lap, and nobody else feels it other than those 19 other drivers that are out there with you. So yeah, it's always good to get amongst the other drivers and talk it through, and to watch the race as well, because we're all fans ourselves. You know, that's the reason we became drivers in the first place back in our karting days.
Remember in 2012, Kamui Kobayashi taking a maiden podium here in Suzuka. Never went on to score another podium. I think the guy who's taken his maiden podium today is going to get many, many more in Formula One. And he's a man You kiss the trophy and it recognises your lip imprint, and then it gives you the colours of the flag. I think it could catch on. We might see it again sometime as well. He's got plenty of those medals to hang around his neck, has Max Verstappen. Christian Horner gets the chance to kiss the Constructors' Trophy as well, up on the podium to receive that on the day that Red Bull make it 6 Constructors' titles. Yeah, but see, he kisses it and it doesn't light up.
It didn't light up for him. It's like the glass slipper, isn't it?
Lando Norris raises the trophy for second place up into the sky, and this for McLaren is their second, and only their second, double podium since the end of 2014. Lando was on the podium last time alongside Daniel Ricciardo. They had a 1-2 at Monza. It's the first time that Oscar Piastri picks up a trophy. First rookie since Lance Stroll in Baku in 2017 to finish on the podium. It's smiles for McLaren. They gave it their best shot today, but once again, the best shots weren't good enough to shoot down the Red Bulls. They have made themselves Constructors' champions for a second consecutive year. It's all smiles for them, and it's on to Qatar, where Max Verstappen could win his 3rd consecutive World Drivers' title.
Huge congratulations then to Max Verstappen, the 28th win of his career, the 13th of the season. It's all smiles at McLaren as well. Double podium for them, and Christian Horner suitably soaked in champagne because Red Bull are the team champions for the 6th time since the team was started back in 2005. Well, it's not long to wait until we've got some more racing, because the weekend after next, we've got another sprint format coming away in Qatar.